Welcome to Woven Soft Edges, Deep Roots, a space where bodies, culture, and transformation meet. I'm Sarah, a body worker, a tender of community care, and inviting you into conversations that nourish and ground. If you love exploring the intersections of healing, creativity, and belonging, consider supporting this work on Patreon. Your generosity helps sustain the quiet labor of community care and keeps these conversations flowing. You can also connect with me on Instagram and TikTok. Links are available in the show notes. Now, let's dive in. Hi, and welcome to the Woven Podcast. I'm Sarah Newberry, and I'm here today with my friend Savannah, and I'm very excited about what we're going to talk about, which is funny to say because excited to talk about pets dying. But we're going to talk about pet grief and how our grief experience with our pets can apply to our human experience. Savannah, tell me a little bit about you, and whoever might be listening might want to know something about you.
Hi, yeah, I am Savannah. I'm the executive director of the Belleville Area Humane Society. I've been in animal welfare for about 10 years, and I have now experienced a lot of pet death.
Yeah, and you've got a little kitty with you today.
I do, yeah, I got a little kitten.
Oh,
Um,
he looks like a little tiger.
do you remember the old TV show with the puppets, Fraggle Rock?
Yeah,
Reminds
love
me of a
that show.
Fraggle.
Yeah, yeah.
That's okay, so we'll get to him. I feel like he's actually an element, perhaps, of this story. But okay, so what first made me want to talk about this was about a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago. My cat, and it was like a middle-aged cat, like 10 or 11. Um, Spoiler, the cat dies at the end of this story, or at least at the midpoint of this story. Um, he started experiencing like really mysterious symptoms, and some of them were like sort of graphic. He was like uh spitting up blood, basically.
Mm.
Yeah. And but like was otherwise acting pretty normal to the point where I couldn't really figure out where the mysterious blood was coming from until in the middle of the night he woke us up and it was on his muzzle. So I did what of course you do is I made the vet appointment. We went to the vet. They were like, this is very strange. He has all these he's very anemic, obviously. Um, but don't find any cancer, don't find anything to suggest a reason or and therefore something to do about it. So we're just going to kind of try to treat the anemia. We're going to throw some steroids at it. We're going to throw some other stuff at it, see what happens. So we had like a month-ish, 3 weeks maybe, where he was getting like mysteriously better. And like at that point you take the win, right? Like I'm thrilled. He's getting mysteriously better. Great. And then one day after we had just gotten like a bunch of good scans, he sort of like fell into like a kitty coma. And never really came out of it. And it was this we found him upstairs where he was sort of like had been hiding away and he was sort of vocalizing and breathing really heavy in a way where I knew it was an emergency. But in that moment, I panicked. I put him in the carrier. I took him to the emergency room. I knew that he was dying, but I wasn't like aware. I wasn't thinking rationally. Okay. Went to the emergency room. They, tried what they could. He never really was responsive. So we put him to sleep at the emergency room. And that sucked. Um, about a week later, I'm on the phone with my parents, and they're like, hey, our cat, who's 19, so very much a senior, she's 19, and she starts experiencing a similar thing. She's breathing really heavy, and slowly, she's not vocalizing in the same way, but based on what they're describing and based on pictures I've seen of this cat, I know that she is also dying. So I said to them, because I've now had the time to process what I would have done differently, I think. I said, you have two options. The first is you can go to the emergency room, which is, perfectly valid. And um, the second is that you can wait at home and, hold out for this process because it's pretty, in my opinion, and I'm not looking at the cat, so like whether I should even, I was right though. Um, I think that she's dying. Like, I think this is the end, guys. And I think you should decide, what do you want the end to look like? And they chose to stay at home and she passed within like a half hour. Um, yeah,
Wow.
I know. And and then it made me start to think about like comparing and contrasting our experiences. I went to the emergency room. I spent, a few hours, couple hours alone in a waiting room while they took him to the back when there is nothing they could have done. And if I had been really thinking clearly, I would know there was nothing they could do. And wouldn't I rather have like been with him, like in a comfy spot for the end there?
So would you like me to share some of my thoughts of what I see happening?
Yeah, please.
So there's all kinds of nervous system stuff going on, first of all,
Yeah.
right? Like we're making decisions in spaces that are like heightened emotions because that's what our body does whenever we need to like respond quickly under stress, under, confusing situations. So there's that, but then there's also this like death piece and there's a culture piece to this and there's like you're asking the question like what kind of experience do you want to have? And we get to experience things like this, like what kind of college experience do you want to have? What kind of birth experience do you want to have? Very rarely do I hear people talking about what kind of death experience. And I think that's because as humans, I mean, and we're talking about cats, and it's like, what kind of death experience do you want the cat to have? But that's also practice for us as well, right? As humans to be with death. But I think a lot of us think that death is this like, who knows? It's like roll of the dice. Like, who
Yes.
knows what's going to happen?
Yes.
And while this is true, and that fact lives underneath the surface of all of us every moment of the day, which is really what's motivating us in a lot of ways, um, is like the fact that like life is finite, it's not infinite. And um I don't know. Here's the question, right? Is can we even be in charge of the experience? Can we even choose the experience? I think some people get to choose the experience. And I think that sometimes maybe it's not about choosing so much as it is about living your life in such a way that feels like choice.
Interesting. Yeah. So as I sort of sat with this A B choice of, I had this experience, my parents had this experience, I did wonder, like, how much of this was just sort of generally a reaction to the lack of control, period. Like, no matter what, it's not like I would have been like, that went great. I'm so glad my cat died in exactly that way. But, but like, is that also a cop out that sure, I would never have been like, I'm so glad that my cat died in this way. But maybe there is a scenario where I'm like, I'm more at peace with the way that this happened. This was still more, I don't know what the word is, but like we started talking about this idea of like, what is a good death? What is a good life? And I have now seen a lot of animals die, which is not a sentence I would have ever thought I would. Like when you're a kid and you love animals and you're like, oh, I'm gonna go into animal careering. You don't you don't realize. Um, and in a lot of ways, like the dignity that we afford to animals is so much more than what we give ourselves or what we give, at least, a fellow Americans.
Hello, friend. If today's conversation is resonating with you, I'd love to invite you deeper into the woven community. When you join Patreon, you're helping sustain the quiet labor of community care, supporting the life and work of a body worker and tender of soft spaces. Even small contributions ripple outward and make this work possible. You can also follow along on Instagram and TikTok for somatic practices, reflections, and ways to stay rooted in your own soft edges. All the links are in the show notes. Now, back to the episode. That that right there is a powerful inquiry. What is well, I wonder if again it comes to like animals are shorter lifespans typically than
Mhm.
humans. And there's this bit about like the roll of the dice. We could die at any time. We could die in the car the next time we go out in it or whatever. But as someone who has sat with a lot of dying people whenever I was really young, one thing that my mom would do is she was a nurse, but she was also like a pillar in the community. And so she would sit with people who were dying a lot and she dragged me along. I went to
Yeah.
so many funerals and visitations as a child that I didn't realize it was weird until I was probably like 30. And so some of my peers or whatever would be like, "Oh, I've never been to a funeral." And I'm like, "Seriously? That's crazy." And I say that because I don't think that my mom had a great death. And I wish that that could have been different, but I wish that could have been different for her, but like that's not my experience. That's her experience.
Yeah.
And even though she sat with so many people who were dying, um, she still wasn't having those conversations with herself, right? It was like it was never going to happen to me. It was always happening to somebody else.
Wow.
And I think that that happens a lot. It's kind of this like, oh, I'll deal with that one day, or like even all the like structure things like a will and preparing your estate or whatever.
Yes.
My mom had all that stuff planned because she was trying to be responsible and care for the people around her, like me.
Yeah.
But so many people don't have any of those things in place because it's like, well, I'll deal with that one day.
Right.
But like, but there's also this undercurrent of like, well, it could happen at any moment.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like we pick and choose what we want to live by or something.
In this, I took a class on death in community college, which was like very cool. Um, and I remember one of the students pointing out that in the past, there were all these like big, tall monuments as gravestone markers. And we think about like old-timey gravestones as being this like half circle, here lies so and so. And like I'm sure there are lots and lots of reasons involving materials and expense and the rise of like burial for the middle class. But it still is striking that you have this like 19th century image of the gravestone as being like above ground and big and something that you can see from the road. And that nowadays our headstones are like in the ground, flat. They're you would just, it just looks like a park from outside the gates. You wouldn't necessarily see all these monuments to death. And
Hmm.
the idea of us removing ourselves from death more and more, like the more we get, the more it's less in our day to day. So it's interesting that you had this kind of like classic, like 1860s experience where death is sort of all around you, and um, you know, your own mortality is a constant reminder.
Yeah. Well, and I find it really fascinating that people are trying to escape death. Like there's literally what billionaires trying to
Yeah.
like keep keep alive or whatever. And
Yeah.
I have this curiosity about the nature of things and like the nature of things and how you take a banana or an apple or something and you throw away the peel and you expect it to go somewhere like compost or you expect it to turn into something else, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I follow people like Perdita Finn and Sophie Strand, and they talk a lot about I think Sophie Strand's like Substack is called Make Me Good Soil or something, which is where she's talking about like composting her thoughts, composting her body, composting everything. Because when we think about compost and we think about like turning scraps into like nutritious, like fertile soil, it's like turning something that's crappy into something really good. And I think like I've often wondered about this, okay? I don't talk about this very often, so I feel a little bit vulnerable putting this out here, but we have a lot of bodies in the ground that are pumped full of like chemicals and formaldehyde and all this stuff. And that's not returning to the earth. Like that's returning something to the earth, but the earth doesn't get to consume that. Like I picture this like time lapse photo of like, a dead animal being like consumed by the bugs and everything around it. And we've returned a lot of bodies to the earth, but we haven't returned them real like in actuality. And
Yeah.
so the question I'm posing here is like, what happens when the nature of things are out of balance when we haven't been returning our bodies to the earth for the earth to overturn that, to consume it and turn it into something else? Like there's all these cool green burials and there are composting burials and what was that one I just wrote about aquamation, like using water to um dissolve the body or something like that.
Cool.
Um I obviously don't have all the information to talk about it like fully, but there's a lot of other options these days, and I think that that's fantastic. But I also think we have to think about what does it mean that we've returned all these bodies without actually returning them.
Yeah. If I even may take it a step further, that we have created all these laws around how and when you can return a body to the ground. And not only have we made all these laws around that process, but we've then created industry
Yes,
around that process.
yes, yes, exactly. And Um, one of my mom's friends, so she died in a small town, grew up there, everything. And her friend was in charge of the funeral home. So she went to her friend, she knew she was dying. She went to her friend and said, "Hey, I'm dying, like, you know, help me get set up." But then I came in and I like already had a relationship with this woman and being able to like speak with her about grief and the sadness, but also like, and this is what needs to be done was so
Hmm.
comforting. But I've often wondered what that process would be like for someone who didn't know the funeral director, because
Right.
I hear about this like funeral industry being very like not so ethical sometimes.
Right.
But I also, it's also important to remember that those laws and those things were put in place for probably sinister reasons, but also because we couldn't just have like dead bodies rotting on the,
Right. You're right.
like, so we have to dispose of them in some kind of proper way. And then especially if someone has like disease or illness, like that can't be in the soil, like, so there's lots of things there, so many
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Um, but to return back to our original kind of place we were talking about is like, what is a good death? We're talking about what is a good like composting situation. What is a good like, because I think that like from a spiritual perspective too, right? It's um like I said, I think there needs to be that sort of like give and take thing, the reciprocity with the earth. But I think there also is this balance that needs to be had while you're living and while you're dying, like the dying process, right? There's a reciprocity that happens there as well. Whenever, oh, and then the other piece to this is like something Stephen Jenkinson says, who is the author of Die Wise and documentary Grief Walker. He also talks about, your death is not for you.
Right.
Your death is for the rest of us.
Right.
And he also wrote a book that's also talks about your wedding and how that's not for you either, which is a whole other topic conversation. But
That's
um,
interesting.
when we live in this very hyper individualist place, right, it's easy to think, well, my birth is for me, my death is for me, my wedding is for me. And we think like, oh, I don't want to have a big I don't want to have a big life celebration of life thing. Like, just
Right.
put me in the ground and don't do any,
Right.
like, I don't want to cause any problems. And it's like,
Right.
oh boy, like there's so much to unpack there. But, you know, the way a person dies does affect the people around the person dying.
Yeah. Can I tell you that I really wished in the moments passing, like after my cat had died, that we had cat funerals.
Yeah, we should.
I
I mean, why not?
I feel like we make fun of this. Like I feel like it's like a popular, not anyone in real life, but like you might see like a throwaway joke on a sitcom that like, oh, they're so crazy. They love their dog so much the dog had a wedding. And like, of course that's silly because a dog can't get married. Like a dog can't consent to marriage. A dog doesn't need to file joint taxes. But like an animal's death is just as real as any other death. And it felt like that there was just no structure to the days following. And since I work at an animal shelter, we have pet bereavement. So I did have like a day of PTO, which is like better than a lot of people get, but like it still wasn't anything that made me feel enveloped by community the way that like there are plenty of people who sort of took it upon themselves to like send me a card or flowers, and that meant a lot. But I don't know how like normalized pet grief is in our culture because how normalized is grief, period.
Absolutely. Well, and what you're speaking to is something culture based that I think is severely lacking. And I will talk about this for so many days, okay? But it's kind of like we, it's, it's like a lot of us who have had spiritual abuse by like the Christian religions or whatever. We left the church, but then we left all of the institutional pieces that the church provided, community, culture, rites of passage, just those kind of like marking of events.
Right.
We left that with the church, and now we're all bereft. We're all like lacking these grounding, anchoring culture points to be like, okay, and yes, grief is like a spiral or it's like a squiggly line, all those meme pictures, you see.
Yeah.
But what would it be like if we had an institution that said, here's how you process your pet dying. You got the 1 day of PTO, your friends bring you cards and flowers, and then like a week later you have the cat funeral where you really bring the essence of this being into the space, blah blah blah, whatever the thing is. And then you could say goodbye.
Yeah.
And then there would be a point where the grief would feel complete, or maybe not complete, but it would feel like there would be like a like a wrapping up of something. You would still have to process that for weeks, years, like the lack of that spirit or that soul or that essence, whatever,
Right.
it is gone forever, you know? I mean,
Right.
I'm at like 9 years my mom has died this year, and there's not a single day, like 5 times a day, that I don't miss her presence, you know?
Yeah.
I don't expect that to go away with whenever I say like closing it up. But if you had a guide to show you what grief could feel like, I hold grief within this container here. I'm like
Yeah.
moving my arms in a circle, but like, you know, grief is contained here. That containment doesn't mean don't feel. The containment is like, this is how I feel it.
Yeah. 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 I've been thinking a lot about, so I have a husband. So I am experiencing a lot of this grief in a pair. And I have a friend who's single, and she also had a cat who like suddenly died. And I've been thinking a lot about how, at the very least, the fact that I have a co-owner of the cat, and really this goes double for when our dog died, that for me to just be able to be like, I really miss my cat. I cannot believe he's gone. And have someone who really gets it be like,
Hmm.
yeah, absolutely. Validating that feeling is really powerful. And I have to imagine that that's part of the feeling you get at a funeral is like, I can't believe they're gone. Yeah, we all agree. And here's stories about how we are all really affected by this loss
Mm.
and how maybe not like it's not like it's going to heal the grief, but I like this idea of allows us to have a literal physical place to express it so that it's
Hmm.
not just bleeding into everything
Hmm. Hmm.
forever.
Yeah. I mean, this is the work that I'm very curious about restoring cultural containers, restoring cultural uh, like beginnings and endings, because that untethered feeling is disorienting, and it's, I don't know, I'm an earth sign. I like have all these things that ground me into like being grounded, I want that, I crave that.
Yeah.
And I think it was once a time when things were a lot more accessible. And
Yes.
I think another piece to this that we haven't touched on just quite yet is like the practicing of little deaths, um, and practicing the grieving, because something we talk about in Mother Circle is like when you become a mother, you are grieving the life you were as a maiden. And people don't talk about that enough, right? Like we don't talk about, there's always like, get your body back, get your life back. And like the fact is it won't ever come back the same, you know?
Yeah.
And, and that's the same thing. It's not even just motherhood. It's like, you're married, you'll never be like not married, and you have to kind of grieve that person, or that side of your personality, or that side of who you are, that will never return. You will never not be a married person again.
Yeah.
And it's same thing with like owning pets, or even like I will never be a person who has a mother alive again, or I will never be like,
Right.
our cat died in May as well, and it was very unexpected.
Yeah.
And and I still kind of feel like I haven't process that. But like, I will never be a person who owns that cat. I don't even like to say the word owns, but you know what I mean? Like, I'll never
Right.
be the person who has that cat again. And her name was Weekend, and she like loved to be outside, and she would come back and she was really rowdy, and she didn't like the kids, and she just kind of stayed in the basement. And um it's like our house feels the lack of her presence. And it would be easy for me to be like, to my kids especially, like, not talk about it, right? But
Right, right,
instead,
right.
because of who I am and what I'm trying to create in the world, is it's like, oh, um, open the door, but oh, Weekend's not here. And like really reiterating the fact that we all know her presence is gone. And like, let's not shove that in the shadows. Let's like talk about that piece of it, right? Because that's the practice. It's like feeling the lack is also part of being alive.
Ooh, wow. That's so difficult, I think, because uh, the fact that you are describing this as practice, and I know that this um is so interesting to me because I think the reason why a lot of us avoid talking about death or avoid acknowledging that something or someone is missing is because we're not sure if it's the right thing to do. Like if it's actually going to be a helpful thing, if it's going to be the safe thing to do. And this idea that of course we don't do this because we have no practice at it. Everything feels uncomfortable and scary and wrong. And especially in the following a death where the stakes are very high and socially you're pretty vulnerable. And you're vulnerable, the person experiencing the loss, the closest person to the loss is vulnerable. That we have this like incredibly high stakes, inevitable life transition that we then also never practice for is kind of wild.
Yeah, it's really wild. You know, my oldest son is very squeamish. He doesn't like blood and guts and stuff like that. He gets viscerally disturbed by things. Whereas like
Sure.
my 5-year-old is very curious about it. I cut my finger on a can the other day and it was like gushing blood and she was like, "Let me see it." And my oldest is like, you know, and so he's very squeamish. I had a friend who was in a car accident. She didn't die, but it was very physically damaging to her. And I was getting the news in the moment and I was like telling my partner about it. I was like, "Oh my God, this is what's happening. She's got this and this and this going on. Like, here's how we can maybe support her family." And my son was like over there turning white and he's like, "I can't hear about this. Please stop talking about it." Okay, I have a choice in this moment, right? As a mom, I can stop talking about it or I can talk about it in a way that's receiving to him, like where he can receive it. And this is where the practice comes in because I'm like, you can't live your life in a bubble. Like you can't live your life in a cushion where like none of this ever happens. So we slowed down a little bit and I was like, okay, I'm going to explain to you why you need to hear about this. I'm not going to give you all the graphic details, but I want you to know that this is something that could happen in life. And, you know, there was some charge in him, so I let him kind of chill for a little bit. But then whenever we talked about it later, I said, the reason why I want you to I want you to be aware of this. I want you to understand these things happen. It's like, if something like that ever happened to me, he wouldn't know what to do,
Sure.
right? And he would probably like freeze, he'd maybe pass out or who knows what. And it's like, okay, this is happening to someone in a different state. We're not seeing anything. We're really just like gently talking about this because this is a thing that does actually occur in real life. And so it's like this practice of like, if something were to ever happen to me, he has like a little bit of experience of like, oh yeah, I remember when mom's friend got into a car accident. She was okay. Like she had surgery. She, recovered, da 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 da. And that's not to bypass through like the terrible things that could have happened, but he needs practice because as much as like I'd like to believe I expose him to a lot of things, he lives in a very cush lifestyle in America, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so I say that because like there's a distinction too in like, okay, your cat died and you can just like follow the social norms about that by like not talking about it ever again or like not
Right.
having a cat funeral or making fun of having a cat funeral. Or we can see this as an opportunity to practice something, right? And it's like, yeah, what if we saw it as practice for our own, the big one,
Yeah.
maybe it would be a bit more well received by people to experience like the small pieces of it, the practice.
It's so interesting that you say maybe it would be more well received because as you were sharing the story, especially about you and your son, I was thinking about how that's another really high stakes interaction. You're like, oh, I have to imagine, I don't have children, but I have to imagine you're like, am I creating a core memory that's either going to like serve this child as an adult or am I creating like a traumatizing, like my point being that the stakes feel so high. And that's I parallel that to this idea of when someone experiences a loss, especially a loss that we don't really know how to talk about, bringing it up to that person or talking about it with that person feels like you're going to say the wrong thing. So I wonder how much of this and how much of you in particular willingness to engage with this like also has to do with a willingness to get it wrong sometimes and to look a little silly.
Absolutely. That's what I was going to say too, is like you will get it wrong.
Yeah.
you know? And we have developed very quickly, it feels like. We've really developed this piece in our culture where we're so afraid of saying the wrong thing, we just say nothing at all, and that becomes
Exactly.
that becomes the wrong thing. Like that becomes the wrong thing. And uh I think like have you ever seen that Brene Brown clip on empathy with like how she's like, here's a casserole, bye.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and I think that that's the piece of getting it wrong is like
Yeah.
getting into the hole with the person and saying, you know what, I might say the wrong thing, but I just want you to know that I'm here and I'm acknowledging the fact that your cat died. And I know that it's really hard. Maybe they don't know. Maybe I don't know what it's like to have a cat die, but I just want you to know that I'm here. It's like sometimes that's all you have to say,
Yeah.
and you like even prefacing that by saying like I might say the wrong thing, but I want you to know that my intention is to be as supportive and loving as I possibly can be. If I say the wrong thing, just please let me know.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about this before, but that was a big I actually just listened to something this morning about this, but like that's a big problem in the social justice spaces and even in the trauma informed spaces where like
Yes.
they're so afraid of triggering someone. And it's like, what if actually we became a safe place to be triggered? And that's the place that I come from whenever I'm talking to my son about these like highly charged things, is like, I mean, I feel like I'm talking about that, all these different things with him all the time. And
Yeah.
it's like, so my goal is to be a safe place to be triggered. Be a safe place to like say the wrong thing, open and vulnerable enough to be like, "Oh, I said the wrong thing. Gosh, I'm so sorry." Or that's not what you needed to hear. Got it. Okay.
Wow. I just like that. That's flooring me because I think that's so brave and such a reaction to this moment where I at once have access to every horror on planet Earth, right? Two taps in my phone, and I can see and experience any horror imaginable. Um, but at the same time, I also feel like we are all as like disconnected as we've ever been, and myself included. Like I try to be really present um, in my daily life, but I have really kind of intentionally, and I think to my own detriment and to the community's detriment, really withdrawn from like understanding what's going on, like in politics. I don't know. I just don't even have the bandwidth for it. And I wonder if I had more spaces, like how you're building in your family, to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing or be uncomfortable. If we all had more spaces to say and do the wrong thing, if we would be kinder to one another, I think we would.
I think so too. And I think that the algorithm has taught us to like curate experiences, right? And that leaves out
Yes.
the messy pieces of real life. You
Yes.
know, if you're I mean, I'm guilty of this too, so I don't want to come off as being like pretentious or anything, but it's like if we only spend all of our time connecting via, like you said, the two taps of every possible horror or every possible clean living room, you know, we forget that like or there's a big thing about people don't want people in your house anymore, because
Mm-hmm.
it's messy or something. And it's like if you're not in other people's messy houses, you can't see that it's okay for your house to be a mess.
Yes.
Because it is. It's okay. It's okay for your house to be a mess.
That's so interesting. And
It's
I
not,
even as we're
it's,
talking
oh, go ahead.
well, just even as we're talking about like cat grief and like I sitting with somebody and saying like I know your cat died. This is so awful and I want to be here with you. Like I even felt myself having a little bit of like a reaction of like, well, that seems extreme. But it wouldn't have been. Like the devastation was extreme.
Well, I think that goes to like how I don't even know what I want to articulate here, but like there's a cultural piece in that too, where we have like minimized death or like
Yes.
minimized our contracts with each other, like cats, dogs, birds, like there was a time when we lived closer to the earth, right? Where we really understood that like birds were here to help us, like coyotes were here to help us, plants were here to help us. We lived closer to that understanding.
Yeah.
And I heard this story recently, yesterday, of like this person. I'm going to try to keep the story brief, but like she found a hurt owl and she called the World Bird Sanctuary. Props to those people. Those people are amazing. Taught her how to like rescue this bird. She brought the bird to them. The long story short is there was too many injuries and the bird had to be put down. And this person was so moved by that experience of looking in this owl's eyes.
Yeah.
And I just think like we've lost sight of that. And so is it your cat or is it the fact that it's another living thing? And if we had a more intact culture around our planet, our earth, our climate, our living things, how that would change those like throwaway jokes and how that would change having a cat funeral and not feeling an ounce of bad about it.
Yeah, I really like that. A more intact culture, this idea that we are missing, that our culture is missing, like kind of a lot of things, actually.
Oh, yeah, don't get me started. But
But,
I like to look at culture from that place. Even whenever I was a little kid, I mean, I was probably 10 or 11 whenever I was having these conversations in my head and coming back to like, why is there so much pain and suffering in the world? And coming back to like, it's a collective thing, it's a cultural thing. So this is something that's like deep in my bones for sure. But I love that more and more people are starting to have these conversations.
Yeah, and I think it's by necessity. I mean, I spent I had 1 day of pet PTO, but I did not go to work for 3 days. And and it was sort of like an arbitrary, you get the 1 day, which that just seems like, yeah, you shouldn't have to go to work immediately following. Um, but then I was thinking like, am I unusually soft about this? That the 1 day wasn't sufficient, that I needed, and I think I was asking that question like, am I unusually soft, parentheses derogatory? Like,
Oh yeah.
am I taking this too hard? And the fact that that is even a question that I'm asking myself, like, shows how deeply I have drunk the Kool-Aid, that like there's a correct way to be processing this. And and not going to work is so public, right? Like it's not like I'm quietly still rocked. I am not at work because I am very sad about my cat is really public.
Yeah, and that makes me think, even in a place where you are surrounded by animals dying
Yeah.
and people bringing home loved, like loving an animal enough to bring it home, that if you feel that way in the space that you're in, you know, what about the rest of us? And I also think there's something totally pointing to like that late stage capitalism, the productivity, like the emphasis on
Right.
productivity over people.
Right.
And that's all in there too, right? So, but you're like, but what you said was, I drank the Kool-Aid, and it's like, well, yeah, we all have.
Right. Right. I
That's the part of collectiveness, like telepathy too, where like I think I said this before we started recording, but it's like my kids learn things that I definitely don't teach them. Even whenever they were like 1 years old, I'd be like, how'd they learn that word? And they hadn't seen anyone else except for like family or whatever. Um, so I think it's just kind of floating in the consciousness in a way.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I will say, like, to humanity's credit, it's not like I have heard horror stories because, again, being in animal welfare, I have experienced many times daily a person coming into the shelter with items and being like, I can't look at these items. My pet has died. I will just buy new ones if and when I'm ready.
Mhm.
Um, and we're always coming from a place of like, I'm so sorry, of course. And I've heard horror stories of disclosing grief over a pet and the person being like, it's just a cat. It's just a
Oh,
dog. Get on with it. But in my experience, that is few and far between. Like the vast majority of people, certainly everyone I encountered in the wake of Dipper's death was like, I am so sorry. Like I do really feel like I got a lot of not just sympathy, but empathy
hmm.
that people really. My dog died about a year and a half ago, and I genuinely feel like I'm a different person on the other side of that. And and I'm having multiple very brief conversations with people about their grief. They come in, they're like, here are these items. And probably half the time, the way the conversation ends is because the other person, the stranger, is so upset. They like they leave the stuff, they leave the lobby, and they're like crying on their way out to the car. And I just think like what in this moment, in this conversation we're having, I think like how tragic is that there's no mechanism for them to experience this grief together. Like they feel the need to like run out of the lobby
Yep.
and privately cry about a thing that like we fully get.
That's that nervous system thing where you can't hold the charge of being with another person, like the social nervous system. You
Mm.
can't be with another person enough to like feel it fully, you know? Um, where was I recently? Where I was in a circle with someone. Maybe it was Mother Circle, maybe it was something else, I can't remember, but there was the question of like, can you fully take in this compliment? Can you fully take in this
Yes.
like, I'm so sorry your pet died, but like, can you be with my apology or my or not my like condolences, you know?
Yeah.
Um, can you be with like me telling you I think you're beautiful? You know,
Yeah.
I see that in my kids too. I mean, everything for me comes back to my kids because they're just like right there all the time. But I ask my kids that sometimes where I'm like, can you be with me telling you good job on this test?
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
can you feel that fully? Can you feel it like drench your whole body in like that? And like a test score is one thing. Your pet dying, totally different thing, right?
I don't know. I'm feeling like I totally get what you're saying, that both of these examples, especially because it's like a treasured adult saying, good job on this test, saying, I
Right, right.
see you, I care about this. Like both of those, my nervous system for sure is like, the word that comes to mind is recoiling, which is probably
Right?
something to work on.
Right, right. Well, I think that's the norm, right? Like I realize that I'm raising my children very not mainstream at all. And it's through the work that I've done for on myself, right? And trying to understand why people of our generation and beyond, like it's not even a generation thing. It's like, why do we grow up with so much flipping trauma? Now, and that's also not to say my children have enough trauma too. Like they've experienced a lot of terrible things, and they still do. And I don't want them to experience that, but also every time something happens, I'm like, instead of being like, I gotta save my children, I'm like, okay, take a deep breath. This is practice. This is practice for them. This is practice for them. It's my job to help them navigate through this rather than try to save them from it, rather than try to fix it for them. Um, yeah.
Wow.
And like I said, I don't ever want to come across as like everything's perfect over here because it's a hot mess express most of the time. But like through the hot mess, right? Like that's where the support comes. That's where it's my kids say some pretty terrible things to me sometimes too because they've had all the space and comfort to be able to speak their mind fully and completely.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. That's the point of it. I mean, the point of it is not for them to roast you mercilessly, but the
Right.
point of it is that you're saying, hey, I'm actually living this like really messy, intentionally messy is a unusual choice, I think, because most people don't want there to be mess. And like even in this moment, I feel like I'm at a really like messy point in my life and it is not comfortable.
Mm-mm, no.
And I
Yeah.
really would like to be comfortable. But the fact that you're making this argument of there's virtue in this discomfort, I'm going to be sitting with.
Well, and I would also say like because I hear you saying like I just want to be comfortable. And what I would reflect back on that is like where can you find comfort even just a little bit? Like even if it's in like I love this blanket or like where can you find comfort even in a very physical like tactile way? Because if you can anchor that, like comfort feels like this blanket, okay? If you can anchor in that, you'll recognize it more when comfort starts to come your way. Because you know this is just like a season, right? It's like I feel very uncomfortable. This whole like growth thing sucks and it's discomforting. Sure, absolutely. But it won't be here forever, just like all the joy in the world is not here forever. But so it's like if you can anchor in that like comfort, even if it's just like a little itty bitty bit, you'll recognize it a lot quicker whenever it comes back your way.
I love that. Like so much of so you've taught me so many really life-changing things, but a thing that I've really been holding on to lately is how can you be 2% more comfortable? I love that because one, it's like, hey, be aware of your body, which is a thing that I need to be reminded of every single second because I just
All the time.
have not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. But 2% is such a gettable percent.
That's right. That's right.
I love that. Like I
Yeah.
just the bar is so low and then there is no real measurement, right? It's like you're allowed to actually feel any percent more comfortable when you make this choice. And then you get this a little bit of control back in your experience that you're like, yeah, I'm still in this discomfort, but I have at least 2% control.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like the visual that's coming to my mind is like a tornado, right? Like when things feel really chaotic, you're like swirling around in a tornado and you can't like hold anything because everything's moving by too fast. It's too chaotic. And so the blanket or like the little 2% anchor gives you, and that's what I mean by like you'll recognize it. So like we have this book actually, this little kid book, and it's called Tornado or something. And there's like a cow that's spinning around in this tornado. And it's like if you could like catch even a visual of the cow, it's like, oh wait, there's still the cow. Oh, there's the cow again. And it's like there's the comfort again. There it is again. And you can like start to grab it a little bit more. You might be able to like get just a finger on it. Then you might be able to get a palm on it, and then the next thing you're got your whole body hugging this like comfort because you can see it.
Yeah, and that's practice too. Like what you're describing is
Yes.
like just a finger, just a palm, practice, practice, practice. If in fact the goal is your whole body wrapped around it, which it doesn't have to be, but for me it absolutely is. I would like to be full body
Right.
comfortable.
Right. Absolutely. Me too. Me too. And to bring that back to like death, um, I've studied death and dying and everything like way before my mom died. But that was a big one for me. My dad died too, and like that was a big one as well, but I my mom died first, and so I kind of had a little bit of experience, right? A little bit of practice.
Yeah,
But you can study something intellectually. I read the books. I watched the documentaries. I did the work. I read the books. That should be enough, right? No, 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 no. That's when things started to open up for me of like, holy shit, this was like really raw. It like tore me open. And I think that if I could have understood like somatically what losing my mom, like the practice of losing things, death wise, and like feeling it. Do you know what I mean? Like I said, I was around death a lot as a child, but like I wasn't with death. I wasn't like letting death like be taken over by the sadness.
yeah, yeah,
There was like this notion of like, hurry up and get over it. What is that? It's just like your neighbor down the street that died. What's the big deal?
right,
But like that's also practice and like the next thing you know, you're like, well, it's just your mom. What you guys didn't even have that great of a relationship.
right,
What are you worried about? And it's like, wait,
right.
wait, wait. Why are we like overwriting all of this all the time?
For false comfort, right? Like
Right.
if I just squash it down. What you're saying too, I've been trying to articulate this concept, and it's very helpful in this moment to hear you articulate, like reading all the books and feeling like mentally prepared. Because again, working at the animal shelter, I've experienced plenty of animals dying. You know, we're it's a very, very small percentage, but every time it happens, it's, you know, uh, like moving and upsetting. Like I had like a kitten that we only cared for a couple days, um, died last week. And that was just like, ugh, for whatever reason, just like hit me really hard. It was a really big bummer. So when my own pets passed, I had a little bit of this like arrogance that like I know what it's like when an animal dies. I'm ready. It's not going to really affect me. I've been through this and I can hang. And then no. It kicked me so like I was on the ground and it's because of the thing you said earlier about like when your cat died and you would open the door and you'd say like, oh, weekend's not here anymore. It was all of these different axes of places where I the presence was missing is a thing you can't really practice.
Right. I mean, even in this conversation, we're intellectualizing it, right? We're
Yes.
like talking about it. If we were like to be in a grief, like if we were to really honor the grief experience that you had, that I had with my cat and your cat, we would be like outside on the ground, probably crying, probably have a fire, like there would be a lot more pieces to like what it's like to move through grief somatically.
Yes.
We would be like feeling it right here in this conversation. And this is what happens so many times, right? Is like we just intellectualize it. That's not actually processing through anything. That's why the same thing, I thought I was ready for my mom to die. I had 3 years to prepare for it. I knew she was dying.
Right.
She had cancer. It's not like it was a car accident and poof, she's gone. Um, and like so I guess I want to just be really clear about that too, is like even in this space right here, we're doing that same thing that doesn't actually help anybody. I
Yeah.
mean, it does, and it will. Intellectualizing is part of it, but like to really move through grief, it's almost got to be like a somatic ritual practice. And the ritual doesn't have to be this big whole day-long funeral procession, right? It can be like we have a weekend's collar and her little paw print on our altar, and like Dia de los Muertos, we spoke about weekend. Like every couple weeks, somebody brings up weekend, and we go to the altar and we like light a candle for weekend. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah.
there's these little things that can be honoring. And again, if we lived closer to the earth, we would understand that relationship with honoring. Um, I've been studying this, intellectualizing it. I've also been in practice with these things now for several years. And so it becomes much more like less weird, less like overriding the nervous system, the body, and being like, you know what? I'm feeling sadness. I'm just gonna go light a candle for my mom because it's Tuesday afternoon at 2 o'clock and just feeling a little lonely.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I mean, in defense of intellectualizing, um, I do think that helps normalize, which allows you to get to a
To
place
totally.
where, but I like this idea of like you have these physical totems, you have this candle or this paw print, and you're feeling it in your hands. I mean, I think that is probably why funerals are so important and helpful is that I mean, that's a place where you feel emotions, where you feel something and where you're crying. And we just don't have that, like, whatever the grief version of collective effervescence is, we don't have a lot of opportunities for that.
Right. Right. I mean, and this is something that you and I have talked about a lot, but like when we think about reconstruction, wait, we can reconstructing, that's the word, community and villages and culture, like that's where this, like I guess I'm trying to say that's what I'm doing the research now so that when we reconstruct culture, community, even like local community, it's like here are the pieces. So I am a chronic over intellectualizer for
Same.
sure. And I'm here for it. And also, um, I also know that that only takes me so far.
That's very wise. And you're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. But I mean, it's wise only because I've had to go through like these very big, like slap you around experiences where I was like, okay, I've read the books, I got this. And then I'm like on the floor, you know?
Yes, I really do know.
Yeah. That's not fun. Not a
No, it's
fun
not
experience.
fun.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
I guess probably necessary though. At least
Yeah.
being on the floor means you've like allowed it to floor you, you know?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, that's like a somatic experience, right? Is to feel the ground. And I
Yeah.
imagine that that's where that like colloquial notion comes from is like there was a time when people would just get on the floor, probably.
Yeah. Well, better than disassociating, right? Like you're on the floor because you got floored. Good for you.
Yeah. Yeah, right. So, all that to being said, like our pets are important. Animals. Oh, I guess the only other thing I wanted to say was like my friend who found the bird and then the bird died, you know, she was really
Yeah.
moved by this bird and I suggested like what if you got a little totem of the same kind of bird and you put it on your altar and you allowed that presence to be like her whole family was moved by this experience. Like that just because the bird died doesn't mean they're gift to you guys.
Wow. Yeah. That resonates too because my husband and I were talking about I have a lot of like portraits of my cats on the wall and we were like, should we take these down now? Yeah, and I've been so comforted like from my like usual spot on the couch when we're watching TV, if I turn my head just a certain way, I can see the kind of like photorealistic one, and it's been such a comfort. I'm
Yeah,
so glad we didn't
absolutely.
hide it.
Right. No, I would say get four more. Put it in your car, put, like keep this baby alive.
Yeah.
Um, so if anyone or you are interested in some of these things that I'm talking about, like Perdita Finn's Take Back the Magic, that is a lot of where I come from with the death and dying. That book changed my life. Stephen Jenkinson, Die Wise, and Grief Walker, highly recommend those resources. There's another book. It was by a Buddhist, somebody called On Be wait, no, just Being with Dying. And that was a really good book that helped me. Um, yeah. So, uh practicing little deaths, somatic practices, ritual, community, being with people. Those are all things that I think will carry us through these big life events, whether it's death, birth, marriage, I don't know, moving across the world, whatever you might be doing. I think those are things that anchor us into each other and anchor us into finding ourselves within the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. This was really helpful for me.
Oh,
So
well,
thank you.
good. Well, and I hope that Dipper's memory can be a blessing for you and your family.
Thank you. Same to you
And
for weekend.
your parents' cat too. Are they doing okay with the whole process?
Um, they're doing okay. I mean, I think that um they definitely aren't ready to talk about it to the extreme that I want to talk about it, let alone experience it. You know, if talking about it's the first step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I also think what would it be like if we didn't talk about it and we just experienced it?
What an interesting question that as a chronic intellectualizer, I couldn't even begin to what, intellectualize?
Right. I feel like that's a much easier angle with like older generation people too, where they were taught very much not to talk about it. Okay, well
Yes.
let's not talk about it then. Let's do something about it. Let's move our bodies with it, you know.
Cool.
What an concept, what an idea. Well, Savannah, thank you so much for bringing this topic to me to discuss today, and I hope that it serves helpful for other people who might stumble across it. And I guess once it's posted, maybe you can share it with the people who come in with their pets. Maybe
Yeah.
it'll make for like an interesting thing for them.
Yeah. I love that. I will do
Yeah.
that.
Alrighty. Thank you so much. If you liked what you heard today, consider supporting Woven on Patreon. Your support helps sustain the quiet labor of community care, lifting up the life and work of a body worker and tender of soft spaces. Even small acts of generosity make a big impact, nurturing the kind of care and connections that our community needs. Thank you for listening, for sharing, and for being part of this web of support. Until next time, stay soft, stay rooted.